Mamasema Masama Makusa. What's up? It's your boy G,
and D.
and this is the Palacio podcast.
Palacio podcast, baby. So
Podcast.
I'm gonna let you
Do the intro.
do what we're gonna talk about, man.
All right, listen here, you degenerates. Today's topic is about femininity and masculinity,
Beautiful woman, the man.
and both men and women, and the
So-
overall mental health that provides for certain people with certain personalities.
Happy National Mental Health Awareness Month. If you didn't know,
If you don't know, now you know.
if you don't know, now you know.
All right, and that's gonna be the opening topic, and then we have Insta models.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about the Instagram. What? How does Lil Wayne put it?
Lil Wayne.
Lil Wayne?
I don't know.
Nah, you know.
What are you talking about?
We don't talk about it.
And then we also got the problem in the inner cities.
With how do we put this?
Beggars
Can't be choosers.
can't be choosers.
If you broke,
Use a joke.
ain't got no hoes.
All
No,
right.
we're gonna be talking about the homeless population in large major cities, because
Bit of an epidemic, I think.
it's
Spreading.
driving to work, in my line of work, I see the hard times and the understanding of how someone can get to that spot, and I sympathize and I support helping other people get back to their feet. And I'd like to say I'm the light side. My brother's a little bit on the dark side of the force on this one.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess we can open it up with the whole inner city thing.
Yeah, well, why not? We start from the bottom. So
we'll start from
homeless
the bottom up.
population. Just if you guys live in any large city,
Then you know what I'm talking about.
there is. I don't know if it's just because we've gotten older and been driving more, and in larger cities or whatever it is, but it just seems like the problem with homelessness, not homeless people specifically, but just a homeless population increase in large cities. My brother, he did his culinary school in San Antonio, and he says it's just rampant through that city.
It's a big problem in San Antonio.
You look at LA, you look at going up a
Another
little
big problem.
north, San Francisco, their homeless population is, through the roof.
Yeah, it's insane. If you even go down to Austin and you go to, you and your homies want to go down and drink on 6th Street, if you go a couple blocks over, you can smell, literally smell the shit in the air from that whole side where they congregate, and they set up tents. And I think if you have, a mental disability or a physical disability, there's a little bit of, sympathizing that comes from any, healthy, productive member of society. But there's also the completely other side of that where, you have these videos online. I'm sure that you guys have seen them, of people dressing up as homeless people and then getting on the subway, taking off their ripped up jacket, and they're wearing a Rolex or something, and get in a Mercedes and then drive off. So you have people that are like that, but I don't think that that's the major issue of it. I think that
that's very low, and that's a very minority part of it.
for sure
I don't think that a lot of people are doing that, and
it takes a certain character to be like that.
that's just totally messed up. But I think it's become more of an issue, and
I think you definitely see it more on the side of people getting that comfortability, and they get in that motions of, all right, if I just sit here and work this corner from 4 to 8, I can make $100, and then they go out and maybe they're tweakers, maybe they're users or something, and they get stuck in that rut. I'm gonna set up my tent underneath this highway, and nobody's gonna stop me. And then all of a sudden, even in the cities around Dallas and Fort Worth area, you can start to see them pop up, and it's an issue. You know what I mean? Like, how do we as a society deal with this? There's a story I wanted to bring to you guys about whenever I was working in San Antonio. I would get up 4:30 because I had to be at work at 5, and I was working 2-3 jobs at this time while going to culinary school, and this is 4:45 in the a.m. and I'm driving downtown towards the hotel that I was working at, and there is a ton of homeless people, like around the buildings, sleeping. But there's this one homeless man in the middle of the street, exactly on my trajectory where I'm going towards. And he literally has no pants on, his boxers around his ankles, and is just completely zoned out, tweaking. And I'm going to work. I don't want to see that. I'm sure you don't want your kids to see that. You don't want to, nobody should go to work and have to deal with that. Like, it's a problem, and like I said, it's an epidemic. I think they certain people get into the rut, and then they get used to it, and it just becomes their life. And I think that it's their job and their responsibility to, if you are suffering, or let's say you don't have family in the area or something, then it's your job to bring yourself up with your own strength, and to provide for yourself, and work a job, and then just sleep on the side of wherever you're working, and until you have the means to afford your own place, or even have like a B&B or something that you can use. I think it's your responsibility to not get comfortable in a position like that, because I certainly will never be comfortable like that, and nobody I know that, or at least respect, would be comfortable living like that.
And I'm a little bit on the other side. I definitely understand that point of view, but I think that a lot of people, certainly nobody, chooses to be homeless. But I think that there are certain situations, from personal experience, or I guess not personal experience, secondhand experience from people that I've talked to who are homeless. They say, they just lost their job, and then they couldn't afford their rent or their mortgage, and then they end up being homeless for a couple months, and they don't have family or anything like this. And sometimes people do fall on hard times, and there's other people who've been homeless for 20 something years, and that's just the way that they live now, and that's just all they know. Or it could be that they're out of recently released from prison, and they can't find a job. Or
but even like that, like I know lots of people who, I don't want to say lots of, but I know a few people who have relatives that are felons, or are a felon themselves. And dude, there's programs, you know what I mean? I mean, there's a ton of opportunity out there. There's opportunity everywhere. And to personally, from my point of view, to say that you don't have that opportunity, if you live in America, is bullshit, in my opinion. And if you look for it, and really look for it, you're gonna find it. There's, like I said, there's programs that are like for inmates that are getting out of prison, to set them up with jobs. There's things like this in place, and implemented for a reason.
Yeah, and I agree with that. There are some programs, but it's not, unless you know the system and the way it works. It's not as effective as people would think. It's not just you're homeless, so they try to set you up with some kind of shelter or something. A lot of those shelters, they have bed bugs, man. A lot of the shelters, they lock you in at night, so you can't leave. And a lot of the people I talk to, they would rather be on the streets than in the shelters, because they say the shelters is one of the most dangerous. They would just take their luck out on the streets, and that's sad to hear that.
Yeah, that is sad.
We're spending this money as taxpayers to provide all these services, and they're just like giving the lowest amount of care. There's people that I've talked to who are homeless who are saying that the people that work at those shelters and stuff, and they can kick you out for anything, basically. That there was someone who their friend got kicked out for just asking a question about what time that they are closing or locking up or whatever, and they kicked him out for no reason. And it's hard, man. It's hard on the people who work there day in and day out, and it's hard on the homeless people who have to deal with that stuff.
So no, I'm just ready to move on.
Okay. Well, I think that I can
both
definitely
perspectives.
see your perspective, that people, they need to be accountable for themselves, and they need to, get off their ass and work, and make something out of themselves. I completely believe that, but I also agree that sometimes people fall on hard times, and you lose your job, or you become injured, or you get in a car accident, you hurt your back or whatever, and you can't work, and then it just happens. And I think that the world would be a little bit better if people had more compassion and were able to do some constructive
I agree with that.
assistance to help those people. And I think that's why we have certain certain things in place: Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, Social Security, stuff like that for people who are actually
In need.
of that. And of course, there are big people who abuse the system and everything like that.
There's always going to be people that abuse the
doesn't mean
system.
we should stop just because there's a couple bad apples. So I believe that that we should all do our part to help each other out as just human beings. And that's basically what I have to say about that, man.
So yeah, I don't know the solution to that problem. I don't know what the government or any political figures would do about that, but I do think it's a concern, and I do see physically the effect that it's taking.
I think that they just, maybe they not so much don't care, but it's so far away from their mind. Like, they don't understand. Someone who's in office and making hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I think that they could understand.
If they took the time to go in a shelter, how many of those politicians do you think have even been into a homeless shelter before?
I'd say some of them, a good amount of them.
I wouldn't think so at all.
I'd say like 30%.
I would say maybe like 5-6%.
If you're a politician, you're supposed to. Well, then again, there's a lot of corruption. I mean, look who's our president. So, that says a lot. But
we're gonna move on. But
we're gonna move on. But it's definitely an interesting topic to discuss. And if you feel that you have some light to share, then by all means put it in the comments or let us know.
Yeah, you want us to go a little more in depth, and we will definitely do that. So just leave it in the comments, and we'll try to get another video off for you guys if you want to talk with us more about that.
So this next topic, like I said before, is the femininity and masculinity in both men and women. To a certain degree, I feel it is actually a little healthy for a man to be somewhat feminine. And I'm not talking about, Johnny dressing up in heels and a dress. I'm talking about, like just friendly jargon. Like most people that I know, or most men that I know around, especially like in the younger ages, like they mess around and they act like, gay with their friends and stuff like that. And I think that's healthy. It's healthy to not look at a certain edge of or certain faction of society as wrong or condemning. Like I think that you definitely don't need to be homophobic, but at the same time you don't necessarily have to be at the other end of the spectrum. Like you see this a lot in a lot of shows. Like I know we watched this show called The Deuce, and there's a lot of homosexual activity that's coming and becoming the norm in society. And I also see the opposite end of that. Like I see a lot of women that dress up like men, and like I think that's also somewhat healthy too. I think it's maybe healthy for a woman to feel like she wants to lift weights or do anything that's masculine. Like women under car hoods, I think is a great thing. I've seen a lot of female gearheads, but you see that in even in society, especially like I think the thing, if it's oppressed and that side is oppressed towards this particular person, then they're going to be much more likely to create this alter ego, sort of, create this whole other character where it's on the deep end of that. And what I mean by that is like, maybe like kind of like I don't know, my brother doesn't too feel fond of me pulling up this name, but Oscar De La Hoya, you know what I mean? Like people, like I'm sure he was like dogged on about like, oh, you can't act gay or you can't do this. And I mean that, he has these photos of him cross-dressing, and like that's the other thing. If you look at Shakespeare, J. Edgar Hoover, like these people, Lady Gaga, like Johnny Depp, The Rock, and they just have these feminine sides to them, or maybe they're doing it out of comedy and alone. But then that also poses the topic of why do people find that funny?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like the Hollywood producers or whatever, but it's like it seems. At least I noticed because I'm big into movies and TV shows and whatever. So I try to go a little more in depth. But it's you take a
Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
yeah, a masculine man who's known for all these masculine things in movies and stuff. You put him on SNL and you throw a skirt on him, and it's like the most hilarious
thing. Yeah, so
seen.
at least it's supposed to be.
I don't get it, man. I think it's very
kind of demeaning, for
Yeah.
for the man. I think it's kind of demeaning for the man, and at the same time, it's also it's demeaning to the people who are actually homosexual, like
or
cross dressers. Maybe they enjoy that. Maybe that's their. I know there's certain people out there that do enjoy that, and I think from the woman's perspective, if I could, if I dare say from that perspective, if I could see from that perspective, I could try and give like a non-subjective view. And I think that to them, for sure, it'd be funny because they're female, they are feminine. But to another man who's not, like, that doesn't really seem funny. Maybe that's just his actual enjoyment. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like,
I think it's just whatever you want to do as long as it's not harming anyone.
Yeah, as long as it's not harming
honestly
anyone,
care
or
less,
as long as you're not imposing your viewpoint on anyone else, like that even goes for like religion. I think that your religion is your religion, but it's not your right to impose it on somebody else and dictate whether they believe something or not. That's not your position. That you're not God. That's.
I have several friends that are gay, and I could not care less, dude.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me
I
whether
could
you're gay or not, but it's
less.
just
And,
you shouldn't impose your viewpoint on other people, or I think it shouldn't be right to find it comical of someone else's sexual orientation.
But I also see the other side that people are quick to say that someone is homophobic.
Yeah, that too.
and
Or
someone
even
is
call them
sexist or
homo,
something.
like on the other side.
It's some people didn't grow up, with being very affectionate. Us being Hispanic people, it's normal for people in our culture to
Kiss another man on the cheek.
Another man on the cheek. You meet someone
Yeah.
and you just
Yeah, like
it's normal,
we have cousins from Mexico that fly down and they do that, and it was like, whoa, for a second it catches you off guard because us as Americans aren't used to that.
Because you're not used to seeing that, you
It's
kind of
interesting.
get on guard a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's homophobic at
No.
all. I think that's just some people were raised a little bit differently, and it's everybody's real quick in 2019 to
Label people as certain things.
Yeah, and I think it's a very slippery slope, man. Because once you put a label on someone, it's easy
to dismiss anything
say.
that they're saying. Like even if you hear about like the racial bias, like
Yeah.
if you label somebody as a racist, it's like, okay, now we don't care what you say because you're racist. Like nobody wants to hear it. And that's an easy label to put on somebody. And I think at the same point there's also the other spectrum of it. There's people that act like victimized, and especially like on our side, we're minorities, and I feel like a lot of minorities do that. They're quick to say, "Oh, a cop is bad," because he's a cop, and and we're from an oppressed people, and I don't necessarily always agree with that because there's a huge uproar in the youth that misuse those prejudices and they mislabel people, like, and it's common, especially with the police, especially with the police. They got the worst end of the stick,
Man.
nobody likes them. It's like, ooh, it's really sad.
It's rough, man. I mean, they're doing they're doing a tough job.
It's our job.
A lot of the calls they go to, people are already aggravated,
Already
they're
mad.
already upset, and then they got to deal with someone telling them what to do. And I think that a lot of cops, they have the not necessarily a power trip, but it's just they are the
Authoritative.
they are the presence of law at that time in that situation, and when people don't show them the respect that they're due, whether that's earned or not earned, that things can escalate very quickly, and
they do.
Everybody's quick to shoot with the camera nowadays, and then they only get one side of the story. Now, I completely believe that there is excessive force used in some cases, and
Many cases.
a lot of people, especially minorities, are targeted a lot different than other people.
Especially based on how you look. If you have tattoos,
Yeah,
you're probably not liked upon a lot more than someone else that is wearing a polo or something.
we were in a car, with all 5 of our friends in a car, or 6 of our friends.
We're all
in a car.
minorities.
We're all minorities, dude. And a lot of us have tattoos and everything. And let's say we're driving down in a 2008 Honda Civic. A cop isn't gonna trust us not nearly as much as
someone rolling up in a Mercedes, yeah.
Older white
BMW,
woman, in a Beamer. Yeah, I mean, you call it a stereotype, you call it whatever you want, but in a cop's mind, what is the threat more like?
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't know what they're walking into.
So they're just more probable.
And I understand that the racial profiling is real. It's 100% real. That's
not
what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say it doesn't happen. I'm just
shining the light on both ends of it. People, like, a lot of times they're victimized, or they want to play the victim in a lot of situations. They'll be like, oh, well, you don't like me because I'm Mexican, you don't like me because I'm this or that, and that's not that's not always the case. And if a lot of people do that, I think it's a big problem. Yeah. I think it's a huge problem, actually.
Well, what we want to just, at least for me, what I want people to get away from. Oh man, excuse me, I got something.
Good.
Sorry about that. What I want people to get away from this is that don't be so quick to label anyone,
or misjudge anyone.
Because once you label someone, it diminishes a lot of what they have to say, and everybody has something of value that you don't know. I think
they have a perspective you can add.
And had an open discussion, that a lot more things would get settled. We're in a situation right now in this country, United States, if y'all don't know, that it is so easy to divide us as people and just label us as in little sections. I'm an American, but people see me as a Mexican, or see me as a young people, or if I'm a Democrat, they see me as a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, they see me as a Republican. And we put
we're so much more than that individually.
Boxes, man, and then you don't want to have valid discussions and mature discourse with each other. Nothing's gonna get solved, dude. And I think that a big part of that just has to do with maybe ignorance or not wanting to put in the time to understand each other.
Yeah. We're all from different backgrounds.
If there was someone who just called me a spick, that's a racial slur for a Hispanic person. It's easy for me to get upset. It's easy for me to want to punch that person, do physical harm to that person, and I wouldn't recommend that.
There's a good story I wanted to add to this one.
But it's another thing to take the time to calm down, to take a step back, and try to understand why that person is acting the way that they are. If you just react, nothing's going to get solved. And what you can do is you can take it's not always going to work, but you can take the time to talk to that person, try to understand where they're coming from, and maybe not only can you understand where that person is coming from, but you can change the way that they think, and they see that
change their perspective. You can try to change their perspective,
or not all people are just reacting to whatever it is, and you can change their perspective, and now they're not that hateful, bigot person anymore. And
but that's not always the case, and I'm sure you know that.
Whenever it goes for any type of category of people. Once you put odds at each other, if you guys don't listen to each other and understand each other, and whether you think that they're right or you're right or whatever the situation is, take a step back and
let's address the situation. Let's try to see it in a new light. I think that's important, for all aspects of life, is to sit back and look at things from a non-subjective view, and to just look at it in the most neutral light that you can, and assess it at that time.
It wants to be just one thing, dude.
Yeah, we're so much more. You know what I mean? I'm a skateboarder / chef / cook / bodybuilder / boxer / jujitsuist, judoist. You name it. Guitarist. Like, there's so much more that we are than just one or two things. Like, and I think that within time, hopefully, we will all, with the mixing of ideas and the mixing of different cultures, we will all start to understand each other a little bit more, and I hope that's a near future for us all.
Yeah, definitely. I hope that we go in the right direction.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on because this is starting to turn into a long video, and time passes
Every time,
so
yeah, every time
quick
it does.
when we do
Yeah.
this. Instagram models. I don't know. I'm on the fence about either or because I understand we're moving into a social
World.
world that everything revolves around these social
It's clicks and
media,
likes and
yeah,
it's
currency basically. I mean,
kind of
a
currency.
like,
You know what I mean?
a
It's
like
kind of
and
a
a
form
comment
of currency.
is a form of currency. I mean, you give somebody two people the same picture. You give someone 100,000 likes. You give someone 0 likes. The person with 100,000 likes can get picked up by a clothing line. Can get picked
Photographers,
up by, photographer, get all
modeling
this free stuff.
agencies.
So you guys are picking and choosing what
What more people see.
yeah, instead of it's just another way of spending your dollar. You're spending your time, and all these companies they're
It's
paying
in-
attention to it.
It's incredible when you look at it. You know, from the viewpoint
We'll do a full video on this one.
yeah, we definitely have a full video on this. But if you look at it in the viewpoint of, I'm sure a lot of like you. Younger, younger side, mid 20s, even probably in the 30s and in the teens, you can get sucked into social media.
Oh, hell yeah.
It
You
will
can spend a whole day
zoom
on
like
it, man.
there's been times I've looked down on my phone and I get on Instagram or I get on something and I am gone and I look back at the clock and an hour has passed because I've zoned into the phone and it's like you're locked in this world and it can alter your time. It can alter your mind state based on what you're seeing and what you like and what you follow. They have algorithms for all of that.
Yeah.
There's these based in
Millions of dollars
algorithms that are there in these apps that will affect what you see. So let's say on this day I'm feeling angry, so I'm gonna like things from Slipknot and I'm gonna like things from I don't know, Whitechapel and all these like these darker like sort of like violent bands, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna start seeing more things on my feed that are related to that. So now because one day I felt a certain way, now what I'm actually viewing is based off of what I already did that one day. So let's say I'm feeling like in a more passive emotion, or I feel like more compassionate, and I don't know, I'm looking at things from different lights, and now my mood is going to ultimately be affected, and that's crazy to think about the implications of that.
Yeah, this is a good topic, so I think we're going to do a full video on this one. So we'll wrap this one up. You guys got a little bit of taste of what that next one's going to be.
Oh, well let's answer the question. Is it Instagram model a model?
You guys have to find out on the next video.
Dun dun dun.
Next episode
of Dragon Ball Z. All right,
So,
Joe.
yeah, we'll check you out next time. Go and we'll try to put the videos on at the same time. Maybe give us a day or two or whatever. We'll put them up. We have a lot of stuff, going on, and we'll try to get all this content to you guys because we are eager to hear what y'all have to say. Peace.